Alright guys, it's time to step into the amazing and super scary world of organic chemistry. But organic chemistry doesn't have to be that scary as long as you know how to study it. And one of the things is that a lot of students try to memorize a lot of things that they don't need to. But this is one of those things that you do need to memorize. So today we're going to go over functional groups. Functional groups are one of the main important things that you need to memorize in organic chemistry to do well. If you don't know your functional groups, then you're not going to know how to do the nomenclature, and you're going to have a very, very hard time trying to identify your components and to do your structures and all that. The first one, alkanes. Alkanes is basically just carbon single bonded to another carbon. Alkenes, carbon double bonded to another carbon. And alkynes are carbon triple bonded to another carbon. Alcohol is pretty simple. It's a carbon bound to an OH group. OH group, if you see an OH bound to a carbon, think it's alcohol. Next we have alkyl halides. For these, we just have a carbon bound to a halogen. And hopefully you remember that halogens are the seventh column in the periodic table, so any of those elements bound to carbon is what makes an alkyl halide. Next is an amine, and in this one we have nitrogen bound to hydrogen and two R groups. R groups is a hydrogen or a carbon, and technically all these should have R groups to one of these carbons. For example here, in order to satisfy the octet rule. Next we have nitrile groups, which is a carbon triple bound to a nitrogen. Now there's something special about the next 5 groups that is pretty significant. Their structures are rather similar, so you want to keep that in mind so that it'll be easier to memorize. So for the sake of ease of memorization, just keep in mind that these next 5 are very similar in structure. How are they similar? Well, they all start off with a carbon bound to an R and double bound to an oxygen. Except now the next one that they're bound to is a little bit different. For example, for aldehydes, it's this group bound to an H, this group bound to an OH, this group bound to nitrogen, and this group bound to an R group, and this one bound to an O, R. So again, to reiterate, aldehydes is carbon, R, and O bound to an hydrogen. Carboxylic acid is carbon bound to oxygen and R, and then bound to OH. Amides are carbon, oxygen, and R bound to nitrogen. Ketones are carbon, oxygen, and R bound to R. And esters are carbon, oxygen, and R bound to OR. We can also see here that amides are just nitrogen, aldehydes H, ketones R, carboxylic acid OH, esters OR. So here we go from H to R, H to R. That's another way to remember this. Now ethers look nothing like esters, and those two get super confused all the time. Here it's simply just O with R and R. A good way to remember this is with a kind of like a little trick. Just kind of think of it as either or. Ether or OR. It's a little cheesy, but there you go. And those are the functional groups you need to memorize for organic chemistry.